So we have created a virtual machine in our Hyper-V, which we will be using it as a server to migrate it to Azure. So after the installation is complete, it will ask you to enter the password for the local username, which is administrator, and I'll do some. And once this username and password is configured, we will configure an application, a simple web application inside of this virtual machine, so that once it is migrated to Azure, we will be able to see whether we are able to access that application or not. So I'll go to Actions, Control or Delete, and log in with the credentials that we just created. And there is more to do once this VM is created. As this virtual machine is created inside of Hyper-V host, we have to also configure an IP address, preferred DNS, so that it can communicate with the internet as well as with the Hyper-V host easily. So we'll wait. Perfect. So you can see this is in Windows Server 2012 R2 Standard Evolution Edition. I'll open a network properties of this virtual machine. So ncpa.cpl. Right now, if you see that this virtual machine is not connected to the external world. So I'll go to the properties of this network adapter card. I'll go to IPv4, and you know that while we configured our virtual switch, we assigned a class B IP address, which was 172.16.6.1. So if you see here, this was the IP address that we assigned. Now what we can do is we can start assigning IP addresses to our virtual machine starting from 2, because 1 has already been assigned to our virtual switch. So what I'll do is I'll go and assign 172.16.6.2. Is that the one? No, it is 21. 72.16.21.2. If you click on the subnet mask, that will be automatically populated. And the default gateway is the one that we configured for our virtual switch. So it was 172.16.21.1. If you have to confirm, we can go to our Hyper-V host and let's check the network properties of that Hyper-V switch. So if you right click, go to status, go to details, it's 172.16.21.1. Okay, right? So here we are. This is the virtual machine 172.16.21.1. And for the internet, you will require a preferred DNS. So in our case, what I'm doing is I'm using Google's DNS server. So the IP address for Google's DNS server is 8.8.8.8, so that we can have an internet connectivity for this virtual machine. And there you go. It says it is connected now. Let's try to ping our virtual machine or the Hyper-V host. You can see the icon of the network adapter changing it to connected. So the IP address of this virtual machine is, and we'll go here as well. So 172.16.21.2 is the IP address of our virtual machine, which we created in an Hyper-V host. Okay, we'll have to change the host name as well, because that would come up with a random name. But let's first try to ping to our Hyper-V host. What is the IP address of our Hyper-V host? So it is 192.168.12.4. So I'll ping 192.168.12.4. Okay, it's not pinging. The reason might be the firewalls. So I'll go to my firewall of my Hyper-V host, and I'll turn off this firewall. So turn off. Let's click on OK. And let's try to ping again. And you can see now it's pinging. So there are two more things that we have to do now in the Hyper-V virtual machine. One is to change the host name, and let's turn off the firewall as well, so that it doesn't obstruct us in some communication. So firewall.cpl, And I'll turn off this firewall. Turn off, turn off. Okay, okay. And now let's go ahead and change the server name. So I click properties. So this is the garbage name. I'll give it the same name which I have given to the virtual machine, which is web server. Click on OK. Okay, right. Close. Restart now. So now, what are the things that we configured on the Hyper-V virtual machine is the IP address. We changed the host name. We disabled the firewall, and we did a simple ping test to see if the virtual machine is able to communicate with the Hyper-V host, and that was doing fine. So after this virtual machine is up and running, we will install a sample application. So we'll have a sample HTML code created, and we'll host that application in IIS. So for that reason, we'll have to install an IIS as well inside of this virtual machine. So go to Action, Control Alt Let, and so I'll open the Server Manager. And let's click on Add Roles and Features. Let's wait until this inventory is collected. Next. We'll select Web Server. Add features. Next. Install. Okay. So meanwhile, this IIS is getting installed. We'll write a simple HTML code. So I'll add an HTML tag. Title. Azure Migrate. Title. The body. Write it. This is the virtual machine that we are trying to migrate from on-premises Hyper-V server to Azure. Close the body. I will close the HTML tag. Let's make this text bold. Let's make this text as well as let's increase the font size as well. H1. So here, close this H1 and then this bold. So this is a very simple website that I have created, wherein the title of our website would be Azure Migrate, valid version 2.0. And this will be the content of our website. We'll see if our IIS is installed. It's still installing, and it's succeeded. So let's close this. Let's close the server manager as well, and we'll save this file into an inetpub directory. So I'll go to save as. I'll go to the location where IIS stores their file. It's C drive, inetpub into www root. And here I'll store this file with a name called index.html. Let's save this. Let's close this now. Let's do a self-test on the IE Explorer to see whether that website has been hosted successfully or not. And we have to also check whether the internet is working on this virtual machine because we have configured Google DNS. So let's try to access google.com. And there you go. Okay, so the internet is working. Let's try to access our website by typing localhost, and there we go. So here's the title, Azure Migrate version 2.0, and this is the content. This is the virtual machine that we're trying to migrate from on-prem Hyper-V server to Azure. Perfect. So our server is ready, which will be migrated to Azure. Now we don't really need this server. I'll close this, and now we will get back to our Azure Migrate project. Okay. So what I have done is within my Hyper-V host, I have logged into my Azure portal, so I don't have to now go to my local machine every time that I want to perform anything from the Azure portal. Okay. So what I'll do now is I'll go back to my Azure Migrate project that I have created when we actually started this session. So once that project is created, how will you access that project? The way you access that project is by clicking on the servers under migration goals. So if I click on servers, you can see there's a project which has been loaded here, but how would you come to know which project that is? So if you see on the right hand side here, you will see the project name, and this is the project name that we had created while we actually started with this session. In case if you have multiple projects, you can always switch between the project by clicking on change, and it will list the list of projects here. So this was my old project, Hyper-V migration, and this is the current project, which is Sunday Bala project. So if you see the project statistics, uh, it has nothing because we have not done anything else apart from just creating a project. So if we do some research, or I would say if you navigate to different options, there are two sections here. One is assessment tools, which is the Azure Migrate Server Assessment. And if you scroll down, there is one more option called Migration Tools, which is an Azure Migrate itself. So while we created the project, we have chosen Azure Migrate as our assessment tool and the migration tool as Azure Migrate, but we haven't done anything special apart from just creating a project. So the first step in migrating any servers is to assess an infrastructure. But before you assess, you first have to perform a discovery of infrastructure. And the way you perform a discovery is by clicking on discover. Okay. So when you click on discover, the first thing that it will ask you is, are your machines virtualized? So as I said, that Azure Migrate can perform a lot of migrations. One is it can help us migrate the the physical machines. It can help us migrate virtual machines which are sitting on Hyper-V, or it could be on VMware. And you can also perform a migration of virtual machines which are in AWS or GCP or Alibaba or any other cloud like IBM software. So where those virtual machines will be categorized, AWS, GCP. So those all virtual machines are categorized under non-virtualized or others. Okay. So but in our case, our virtual machine that we want to migrate is on Hyper-V. So I'll click on yes with Hyper-V. And what it will do is to perform a discovery. What Azure Migrate has done is that it has created its own collector appliance. Okay. So that we call it as Azure Migrate appliance. You have to install this Azure Migrate appliance in your Hyper-V so that it can perform a discovery of all the virtual machines which are sitting on your Hyper-V host, and then it can report the metadata of those discovered machines to Azure. Okay, and that's where it is giving us an VHD file to download, and we can simply import this VHD file in a Hyper-V manager, and it will create a virtual machine for us. So what I have done is I have already downloaded this Azure Migrate appliance. So the next thing is to create this appliance. And to create the appliance, let's get back to our Hyper-V manager and let's create this appliance. So I'll right click on new. I'll click on virtual machine, click on next. I'll have to provide a name to this virtual machine. The name I will give is like AZ collector, or I would say AZ appliance. So this appliance will be responsible for collecting or collecting information from our infrastructure and report it to Azure. So I'll store this virtual machine configuration to this location. Let's click on next. Let's go with the generation one. I'll have an so let's go with the same 1024 MB memory, or we could extend it for some performance issues. Let's click on next. I'll connect this virtual machine with my NAT switch. Next, and here it is asking us, would you like to create an hard drive for this virtual machine? And in our case, we won't be creating hard drive now because Microsoft has already provided us with an VHD that we can simply import it. So let's click on use an existing virtual hard drive. I'll go to browse and you will find that VHD in the downloads. But before that, before you actually use that VHD, you'll have to unzip that VHD because that VHD is part of this unzip file, this zip file. Let's see if it directly takes a VHD from the zip file. So I'll go to virtual hard drive, click on next and finish. All right, so it says that failed to set folder permission, verify that the host machine account has read-write access to the share. Okay, yeah, so we will have to unzip this and this will take some time. Right click and we'll extract this to the same location. So click on extract. So now let me explain you what exactly we will be doing with this appliance. So there's this Azure Migrate appliance is basically a virtual machine which will collect or which will discover the entire infrastructure. Now, when I say entire infrastructure, only the Hyper-V infrastructure that we're talking about at this moment. So it will collect information of all the virtual machines which are part of the Hyper-V host that we will add in our collector appliance. Once that is done, it will send the metadata of the virtual machines. So when I say metadata, it does not sense the actual data. Okay, it does not sense the user data which is on the virtual machine. When I say metadata, that means it will send the performance data of a virtual machine. It will send the hardware configuration, the CPU configuration, and everything to that Azure. So what Azure can do is Azure can use that information to provide meaningful insights of our servers and forecast or share the assessment report, which will tell us the actual size that we will require when we migrate it to Azure. Number one. Number two is it will also help us in giving us a tentative estimate that when you will be migrating this service to Azure, this will be the cost of your machine. So this is the compute cost and this will be storage cost. So that information will help our management or our team to decide whether we should be migrating our on-prem servers to Azure or not. And in every enterprise, whenever we perform any sort of migration, this is the first step that every engineer or every architect takes to assess the infrastructure first, to understand what are the dependencies, what are the applications, what are different operating systems that we are running, and then uh, we also take cost into consideration to understand whether my on-premises cost is feasible for me, or if I can save some cost by migrating those servers to Azure. So this is the appliance which will collect all this information and send it to Azure. And based on that information, we will create our assessment reports. And once the assessment is finalized, for yes, this is the assessment that we have to go with, then we'll start replicating and migrating our servers from on-prem to Azure. Any questions, Bala, until now?
No, once it's installed, we need to create the virtual appliance, right? So with
Yes,
this software, we need to install one more virtual machine, like that is a virtual appliance.
yes, that's right.
So this once we create and we need to assess.
Yes. So after the data is collected by Azure, we can perform an assessment based on the data collected. So we'll be covering each and every part in this session. So once this appliance is created, we will configure this appliance, and then it will start sending the data to Azure. And for a deeper analysis, let's do one thing. Let's log into our web server. This is the one that we will be migrating. And what I'm doing is I will install a stress tool on this virtual machine so that let's see what kind of performance it sends to Azure. So I'll go to an Azure portal. I'll go to google.com and install a tool called uh, Heavy Load from Jam Software. Yeah. Before that, let me turn off the IE enhanced security and configuration. Okay, and this is the tool, AV load. So this tool is basically a stress tool, which can help us do a lot of things. One is to increase the load on CPU, memory, your disk IOs, okay, and frames per second. So let's launch this tool now, and we will increase the utilization of this server to the maximum. Okay, so you can choose what are the metrics that you want this stress to be performed on. So CPU, disk, memory, and frames per second. So I'll start this tool, and you'll see the utilization of CPU and memory going to 100%. So I'll right click on this. Let's go to Task Manager. And if you go to Performance, you would see the CPU is around 100%. The memory is around the memory is being utilized at 30%. So let's leave this server as it is, and we will close this, and we'll get back to our unzip operation. So it's 82% now. Once this is completed, we will create another virtual machine, which will act as our appliance, the collector appliance. All right, so now the appliance has been unzipped, and if you go to the appliance folder, you would see there are three different folders called snapshots, virtual hard disks, and virtual machines. You would see a VHD file inside of the virtual hard disk folder. Okay, and we will use this VHD file to create our appliance. So I'll open my, yes, we already have this tab open. So you go to browse and select the appliance now from the extracted folder. So let's select this appliance now. Let's click on next and click on finish. So this has now created a server for us called as AZ appliance. Let's connect to the server and let's start this server. And with this particular VHD, you will not have to perform any sort of installation, but because this is a pre-configured VHD, which will have everything, which will have an operating system and which will have this AZ, which will have this Azure Migrate appliance pre-installed. So once this server is up, it will ask us to configure the local username, not the username, but the password. And once that is done, we will again change the name of the server because that would come up with a random name. And after we change the name, we have to do an IP configuration for this particular server as well. Because we don't have any DHCP server configured in our Hyper-V host, and that's why we have to assign these IP addresses manually to all the virtual machines that we are creating. All right, so this virtual machine is now up. Let's accept the terms. Create a password for a local account. Let's click on finish. And let's log into the server now. The first thing that I would do is before I actually go ahead and configure the appliance is to do an IP configuration. So we all know the IP address that we will be using is in the 172 series. So 172.16, 172.16.21.3, because 21.1 is our virtual switch IP address. 21.2 is our web server IP address, and this is a appliance. And the default gateway would be 172.16.21.1. Very important. The appliance needs to have an internet connectivity, because when it will be collecting the data to send it to Azure, it would need a connectivity to the internet. So I'll configure a Google DNS here so that it can communicate with the internet. Let's click on OK. Let's click on OK. So, yeah, there you go. It has picked up the network now. And let's try to ping our Hyper-V host. The IP address of our Hyper-V host is ping on 92.168. Let's verify once again. It's something. Okay, 172.168.12.4. So here 172.168.12.4, and it's able to connect to my Hyper-V host. Let's also turn off the IE enhanced configuration.
Sir, web server we have public IP, right, sir? So
No, we don't have a public IP address. That is a virtual machine which is created inside of Hyper-V. So it does not have a public IP at the moment.
so web server. Okay, we have 192.172.16.21.1, the 21.1, 21 actually.
I'm not getting what you're saying.
No. 172.16.21.1. Which IP address that is?
So 172.16.21.1 is our virtual switch IP address.
Okay.
Okay, and the web server IP address is 172.16.21.2.
2.
Yes, and
Yeah.
this is the collector appliance, which is 172.16.21.3.
3. So
Okay.
Hyper-V host, what we are talking, that is a
Hyper,
different IP.
yeah,
Yeah.
Hyper-V host is 172.168.12.4. Let's now try to access internet on our collector appliance and see whether we can access internet. And there we go. Okay. So let's do some Excel work now. So I'll open an Excel. And here what I'll do is here we'll write something. So this is a Hyper-V host. Okay. What is the Hyper-V host name? Host name is Hyper-V. What is the host name of our Hyper-V? Hyper-V host. Okay. This is the host name. The IP address of our Hyper-V host is 192.168.12.4, I believe. It's 12.4. Okay, it's 12.4. What is local admin here? The local admin is Azure admin. Let's not write the credentials. Okay. And I will just merge and center. Then we have our web server. Grab them. The host name is web server. IP address is 172.16.21.2. And the local administrator is administrator. And the third one is Azure Migrate Appliance. The name of our appliance is AZ Appliance. We haven't changed the name. We'll have to change that one. Where is my appliance? This is the appliance. Let's first see the name. Yes, so we haven't changed the name yet. So let's change the name first. Let's click on change, and I will give it a name called AZ Appliance. AZ Appliance. Okay. Okay. Let's close. Let's restart now. Okay. So the name of my appliance is AC Appliance. The IP address is 172.16.21.3. And again, the local admin is my administrator. Now what we have to do is we have this three different servers. This is our Hyper-V host. And on this Hyper-V host, we have created this two virtual machines. One is our actual web server that we are going to migrate. Okay, so I'll write it here to be migrated. Okay. And then to perform the discovery, we have an appliance. Okay. And to perform the discovery of our Hyper-V environment, we have this appliance called Azure Migrate appliance. We haven't done anything yet. We have just set up the infrastructure and we have configured a web application on this web server. Now we have to configure this appliance, and to do so, let's jump back to our appliance now. This is the AZ appliance. I'm logging to this appliance now. And once you have logged in, you will see an AZ Migrate configuration icon on the desktop, which we will use to configure the appliance. So let's wait until this server is logged in. All right. So you can see there's an icon on the desktop called as Azure Migrate Appliance Configuration Manager. Okay. Even if you don't click on this appliance, what happens is whenever your server is rebooted, what server? The appliance is rebooted, it automatically launches this configuration manager. Okay. So what it will do is it will run a PowerShell script, which has been configured as a part of the task scheduler. And once this is done, it will launch this appliance. If you want, you can also launch this appliance manually. So I'll do this manually. I've double click on it. And now this appliance would open up in the Internet Explorer. Okay, so it has picked up the old name. The first tab it opened up was with old name, but when it launched on its own, you can see the host name being changed. So it is now connecting to a port called 44368 on which this application has been configured by Microsoft. And this is the application which has not been configured by us, but this application was pre-configured by Microsoft. And what we did was just to download the VHT, and we imported that VHT in our Hyper-V manager. So we'll wait until this application gets launched. Okay, so now the first step is to set up all the prerequisites, and the prerequisite would contain steps like checking the connectivity to the internet, whether the server has connectivity or not, checking the time, whether it is in sync with the internet time server, and to check if we have the latest Azure Migrate updates. So let's accept this, and then the Azure Migrate will start checking the prerequisites. As we have already configured a DNS server for this particular virtual machine, it has an internet connectivity to the internet. So it has been checked and it has been given a green signal. The time is also in sync with the time server on internet. And now what it will do is it will check for all the latest Azure Migrate updates, whether those are installed on this server or not. If they are not installed, Azure Migrate will go ahead and first install all those pending updates, and then it will allow us to configure the rest of the things. So rest of the thing contains registry with the Azure Migrate server, wherein you have to specify your account details. And the third one is to provide our Hyper-V host details. So during this installation process, it might ask for the local username and password for the installation, and you have to enter the local username password of this particular server. We'll give some time because usually it takes around 3 to 4 minutes and sometimes up to 5 minutes for installing these updates.
So once we launch this particular appliance, so no need to select anything. Otherwise, we need to select something to
No,
start.
so you don't have to do anything once this appliance is configured properly. So any new infrastructure that you create within your Hyper will be automatically discovered by this appliance, and the metadata will be sent to Azure. So you don't have to do anything. You just have to set up this appliance and you're done.
Okay, we have to open the appliance. That's it.
No, even if you don't open the appliance, that is fine. You just have your appliance has to be up and running all the time to perform the discovery.
Okay. Yeah.
So it says that the latest Azure Migrate updates could not be installed. Let's do a retry. I've seen a couple of cases wherein the Azure Migrate updates were not installed, but clicking on retry have installed those updates. And here it is asking us for an credentials. So this is the local credentials of my appliance. And one more update with respect to migration. In the past, we have already seen migrating the on-premises databases from the SQL Server to Azure PaaS. Okay, so this Azure Migrate tool can be also used for migrating the databases from on-prem SQL servers to Azure PaaS, and it can also help us to migrate the web applications from on-prem to Azure. So if you go to your Azure Migrate project, so this is the project, okay, and on the left-hand side you can see what are the different workloads that it can migrate. One is the servers that it can migrate. It can migrate databases. It can migrate virtual desktops. It can migrate web applications. So Azure Migrate has now been acting as a central hub for all your migration related stuff. Okay, now you can see this Azure Migrate prerequisites are completed and all the latest updates are now installed. Let's click on continue. So once you click on continue, it will ask us to register with Azure Migrate project. So let's click on login. You can mute yourself, Bala. So Bala, please mute yourself. So I'm logging into my account so that it can discover the different projects that we have in our Azure subscription. right, it has logged in now. I can close this tab, and it is now starting to discover the different subscription my account has access to. So I'll select the subscription. Then it will list all the projects that we have, the Azure Migrate projects that we have within this subscription. So for this particular demo, we have this project created called Sunday Bala project. And here it is asking us to enter the appliance name. So appliance name is the host name of your appliance. So our appliance name is AZ Appliance. So I have to enter that name here, AZ Appliance. And just click on register. And it will register this appliance now with our Azure Migrate project. So this is the step that it is happening now. It is now registering this particular appliance with our Azure Migrate project. And once this is done, the next step is to enter the details of our Hyper-V host. Okay, so you can click on add. And the first thing that it will ask us to enter the username and password. Now, what this username and password? So these are the credentials that will be used for connecting to Hyper-V host. So you have to make sure that the credentials that you enter have access to your Hyper-V host. So my Hyper-V host credentials are this Azure admin and my password. And let's give a friendly name. I would say Hyper-V host underscore creds. And let's click on save details. And if you scroll down, here it is now asking us to enter the list of Hyper-V hosts that you want to discover. So I'll click on add. And what was the IP address of our Hyper-V host? 192.168.12.4. So I'll enter that IP address here, 192.168.12.4. And I'll click on validate. And it is now performing a check. And you can see here, it has discovered the infrastructure and says that there are two virtual machines which are running on the Hyper-V host, and the name of the Hyper-V host is Hyper-V and host. Okay, so let's click on validate, and it is validated. And when you click on save and start discovery, what will happen is it will start the discovery immediately. And you can see here initiating discovery and configuring appliance. And what it says, you will be able to review the discovered machines on Azure portal and create the assessment within few minutes. Time taken depends on the number of hosts added, approximately 1.5 minutes per host. Collection of performance data will be initiated, and it is recommended that you create performance-based assessment after 24 hours. So that's it. We are done for configuring the appliance. You can leave this appliance now as it is, and we shall wait for some more time so that the data has been collected in our Azure Migrate project. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll wait for 10 minutes and we'll be back in 10 minutes to do an assessment and then the actual migration. Okay.
Okay, sir. Yes, right.